Chapter 1, The First Glance. Sofia knew it was a risk. The university hallway was empty, and the echo of her footsteps made her feel even more alone. As she turned the corner, she bumped into him. Dark, intense eyes, Professor Daniel looked at her with a spark that had nothing to do with the literature curriculum. He gave a faint smile, and for a moment, the tension in the air was dense and dangerous. She felt her heart race. She knew this attraction was forbidden, but the intensity of that gaze made her body respond uncontrollably. Chapter 2, The Invitation Impossible to Refuse. After weeks of discreet glances and double-edged comments, Sofia found a note tucked between the pages of one of her books. It was an invitation for coffee, just the two of them. The mere thought of sitting across from him in a private space made her blush. The secrecy, the mystery, everything conspired to make the meeting more exhilarating. She knew it wasn't wise, but the growing desire was undeniable. When she finally met him at the cafe, every word they exchanged seemed charged with something unspoken, with a restrained longing that surrounded them. Chapter 3, Accidental Touches. At that cafe, every movement felt like a promise. Daniel's fingers brushed Sofia's as he reached for a cup, sending a shiver down her spine. Her skin burned under the brief and accidental touch. There was a palpable tension between them, a dangerous game they both pretended not to notice. Their words were merely excuses to prolong each other's presence. She watched him speak, his lips shaping every word, and imagined what it would be like to give in to the growing impulse inside her. The forbidden enveloped her like a mist, making the moment inescapable. Chapter 4, The Game of Words. Days later, Daniel suggested a book for Sofia to read. It was a dark romance, full of passion and tension. As they discussed the book, they both knew they were talking about more than the story. Their exchanged words were a secret dance, a disguised flirtation that left Sofia excited and anxious. She found herself diving into the book's words, imagining herself as the heroine captivated by a forbidden love. And when Daniel's eyes met hers again, she knew he was having the same thoughts. Every page she turned felt like a promise of something more. Chapter 5, The First Stolen Kiss. It happened at the end of a lecture. The classroom was empty, and Sofia, the last to leave, stayed behind to ask a question. As she approached, he whispered something that made her laugh, and then, without warning, he was so close she could smell his cologne. In an irresistible impulse, Daniel kissed her, and the world seemed to disappear around them. It was a kiss full of pent-up passion, of accumulated desire. Their bodies were drawn together like magnets, and Sofia felt her heart race so fast it seemed to echo in the empty room. Chapter 6, The Shared Secret. From that kiss onward, Sofia and Daniel were connected in a new and forbidden way. Every class became a test of self-control, a game of disguise. He would send her looks that only she could decipher, and every gesture seemed like a code, a promise. The risk and intensity made her blood boil. Every second in his presence was a constant reminder of the irresistible attraction between them. And when they were alone, the outside world ceased to matter. There was only this wild, secret romance. Chapter 7, The Nocturnal Confession. On a rainy night, Daniel invited her for a walk. Under the dark sky, he pulled her close, whispering his desires in her ear. The confession was direct, intense, and Sofia knew there was no turning back. He pressed her against a wall, his hands exploring her body with an urgency that matched the storm around them. The risk of being seen and the power of the moment made her feel a mix of excitement and surrender, something she had never imagined possible. Chapter 8, The Secret Escapade. After that nocturnal encounter, Sofia and Daniel began meeting in increasingly risky places, but the thrill only grew. They met in empty study rooms, exchanging kisses and touches that left invisible marks. The forbidden had become part of their routine, and every meeting felt more intense than the last. The touches, the whispers, the glances heavy with desire, Sofia knew the secret was becoming harder to keep with each moment. But she also knew she couldn't stop. Chapter 9, The Candlelit Encounter. On a Friday, Sofia received a message from Daniel. It was an address, followed by a cryptic phrase, "Come. I'll be waiting." Nervous and excited, she arrived at the location, a small, cozy apartment lit only by candles. When she entered, Daniel greeted her with a calm smile, but his eyes burned with desire. That night was different. There was no rush, no constant fear of being caught. They were alone, and the world seemed to pause for them. Sofia sat down, and Daniel poured wine. They talked about their dreams, their anxieties, each word drawing them closer. As the hours passed, the confessions turned into whispers and then into silences filled with meaning. When he kissed her, the touch was slow and intense, as if they were savoring every second. That night, there were no restrictions, only the heat between them and the feeling that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Chapter 10, The Risk Becomes Evident. After that night, Sofia and Daniel felt their relationship had changed. It was no longer just a game of secrets and casual meetings. Something deeper was growing, and with it, the risk was increasing. At the university, Sofia's friends began noticing her changes, the sparkle in her eyes, the unexpected smiles. There was also the danger of glances and whispers among Daniel's colleagues. The relationship that once seemed manageable now consumed them, threatening to expose the secret they shared. Despite the growing tension, Sofia couldn't avoid her encounters with Daniel. Every moment away from him brought an almost unbearable anxiety. They both knew they were walking a tightrope, but neither seemed willing to let go. Desire had become an addiction, and the other's presence was the only way to satisfy it. Chapter 11, The Unexpected Revelation. One day, upon arriving at university, Sofia found Daniel in a secluded corner, his face tense and worried. He pulled her into an even more private spot and whispered in a grave tone that they needed to be careful. One of his colleagues, an older professor, had suspected their closeness and hinted at it in a meeting. Sofia felt a chill run down her spine, but Daniel's determination not to leave her was what kept her strong. They knew their love was complicated, but they were ready to face any difficulty. Despite the warning, they met that very night. The tension of the imminent risk only heightened the desire between them. In the dim light of yet another secret meeting, Daniel held her with more intensity, as if that moment was unique and the last. The depth of his gaze, his firm hands, every detail revealed the fear of losing what they had built, but also the willingness to fight for this forbidden love. Chapter 12, Invisible Marks. The relationship was leaving its marks on both their lives. Sofia found herself distracted, unable to think of anything else. Her days were marked by quick meetings in the hallway, furtive glances during classes, and messages exchanged in the early hours of the morning. Her friends questioned her about her absence from outings and events, but Sofia avoided the subject, hiding the romance that consumed her. She realized that her life was becoming more and more intertwined with Daniel's, and the thought of turning back seemed impossible. Daniel, for his part, faced suspicious glances from some colleagues. He was aware of the price he would pay if anyone found out, but the intensity of his feelings kept him bound to Sofia. Sometimes, he would watch her in silence, as if memorizing every detail of her face and gestures. They both knew they were risking everything, but somehow, that only made their love more burning and intense. Chapter 13, The Unexpected Trip. It was during the winter break that Daniel suggested something bold, a trip together. Away from prying eyes, they could live their relationship without fear, at least for a few days. Sofia accepted without hesitation. They went to a secluded cabin in the mountains, where they could, for the first time, act like a couple without hiding or fear. Every moment in the cabin was lived with intensity, from lazy mornings to afternoons by the fireplace. Their closeness seemed even stronger, and Sofia wondered if this forbidden romance could ever become something real. On the last night, Daniel held her in his arms and confessed that, despite all the risks, he would never regret meeting her. Sofia felt a mix of joy and anguish. She knew that soon they would return to their routine and the usual limitations. But, in that moment, they both decided to forget about the future and live each second. Chapter 14, The Return and the Conflict. After the trip, returning to reality was even more painful. Sofia and Daniel tried to hide the intimacy they had just built, but the difficulties began to intensify. Rumors started circulating among the students, and Sofia began to notice curious glances. One night, after a class, Daniel found her and revealed that he had been called for a meeting with the director, which could jeopardize his position. Sofia felt the weight of guilt and tried to distance herself to protect him, but Daniel insisted that, despite the consequences, he would not give her up. Their desire hadn't diminished, on the contrary, it seemed greater with each passing day. But they both knew their relationship was becoming unsustainable. At the same time, the love they felt for each other was growing deeper and more intense. They were both willing to face anything, as long as they could stay together. Chapter 15, A Risky Decision. After a long night of conversations and whispered promises, Daniel proposed something that surprised Sofia. He was willing to give up his career and move to another city, where they could build a life together without the restrictions and risks they were facing. Sofia was moved, but also frightened. She knew that accepting this meant completely changing their lives. Still, the idea of living freely by his side was too tempting to ignore. Sofia accepted the proposal, and together, they began to plan the new life they would build away from there. Each secret meeting now had a new meaning. They were farewells to the life they had known, and at the same time, celebrations of the new life they were about to start. Chapter 16, The Outcome. Finally, on the last day of class before they left, Sofia and Daniel met one last time in the university hallways. The weight of farewells and the fear that something might go wrong hung over them, but the certainty that they were doing the right thing kept them firm. When they looked at each other, they realized that everything they had faced had made them stronger, and together, they could face any challenge. That same night, they hit the road toward the unknown. They were ready to leave the past behind and, together, build a new story where there would be no more need for secrets or furtive glances. Finally free, they embraced the chance to live their love fully, without fear of tomorrow. Thus, Sofia and Daniel moved to a new city, where they began their lives with the intensity and commitment they had always dreamed of. Chapter 17, The Beginning. The new city was small and calm, perfect for the fresh start they had dreamed of. In the first few months, Sofia and Daniel lived in a sort of bubble. Every day felt like a new discovery, and the excitement of their new beginning strengthened their love. They rented a small apartment in the center, where they spent nights cooking together and making plans for the future. Sofia decided to resume her studies, while Daniel looked for a new teaching position. Both were determined to build something lasting, far from the prying eyes that had once judged them. However, reality soon began to interfere with their romance. Daniel struggled to find job opportunities, and their savings began to run out. Sofia, now more independent, also faced the challenges of adapting to a new city, without close friends. Gradually, they realized that the intensity of their early days was giving way to concerns and moments of uncertainty. Still, they knew they had something solid and were willing to face everything together. Chapter 18, The First Conflict. Over time, their relationship began to be tested by something unexpected: routine. Bills piled up, and the money that once seemed enough became increasingly scarce. Daniel, in particular, felt frustrated. He, who had always been secure and passionate about his profession, now found himself questioning his worth and choices. Many nights he came home exhausted and downcast, and Sofia tried to comfort him, but she too felt the weight of uncertainty. One winter evening, the accumulated tension overflowed. After an argument about spending and financial difficulties, Daniel got angry and ended up saying harsh words that Sofia never expected to hear. She, who had always believed in the balance of their relationship, felt hurt and wounded. The two spent the night in silence, each in their corner, reflecting on the future and the obstacles that seemed to arise every day. But the next morning, Daniel apologized and promised to make an effort not to let the everyday difficulties erase the love between them. Chapter 19, The Reconnection with Passion. Knowing they were drifting apart, Sofia suggested a weekend trip to the countryside. They rented a secluded cabin, far from all their worries, with the goal of reconnecting and remembering what brought them together. The change of scenery brought new air, and the two found each other again in an intense way, like at the beginning of their relationship. They walked through nature, talked at length about their dreams and fears, and revived the passion that had consumed them. It was a reminder that, despite the problems, there was still true love there, a bond worth preserving. When they returned to the city, they felt renewed, but both knew they needed more than just moments of escape. They decided that each would seek a way to contribute to the relationship and keep the love alive. Daniel focused more on his professional projects, while Sofia threw herself into courses to boost her career. Together, they were ready to build a solid life, but the challenge of living together was just beginning. Chapter 20, Sofia's New Paths. Sofia, resuming her studies and getting involved with new people, began to explore her own identity and interests. Over time, she realized that although she had moved for love, she no longer wanted to depend on Daniel. The love was still there, but Sofia felt an increasing desire for autonomy and individual growth. She found a job at a local publishing house and, little by little, was building a promising career, feeling fulfilled. Daniel, proud of Sofia, also felt insecure. The emotional distance between them grew, and he didn't know if it was just a phase or if something larger was changing. In an open conversation, Sofia shared her feelings and the desire to maintain her independence. Although difficult, Daniel realized that they needed to balance love and individuality, without suffocating each other's dreams and freedom. Chapter 21, The Differences Intensify. Over time, the differences between them became more evident. While Daniel preferred a quieter life, Sofia longed to explore the world, experience new cultures, and constantly challenge herself. She began to travel for work, while he settled into the routine of teaching at a nearby school. Each time Sofia returned, she brought something new: stories, ideas, even new friends. And although he felt happy for her, Daniel began to question whether they still had the same life goals. One evening, after a dinner where Sofia excitedly talked about a possible international trip, Daniel wondered if she still saw him as part of her future. Doubts hung over them, and both realized they needed to reassess their relationship to prevent the years of living together from becoming just a burden. Chapter 22, The Deeper Side of Commitment. After many dialogues, tears, and moments of reflection, Sofia and Daniel decided to seek help together to understand the transformations they were going through. Couples therapy sessions brought new perspectives and allowed each to explore their own expectations and fears. Daniel acknowledged that he needed to be more flexible, while Sofia realized that although she valued her freedom, she didn't want to give up her relationship with Daniel. Over time, they learned to communicate in a deeper and more transparent way. The rediscovery of respect and empathy transformed their relationship, allowing them to stay together, but in a more mature and conscious way. The routine still existed, but now they shared common goals and knew how important each of them was to the other. Chapter 23, A Love That Withstands Time. Years passed, and life brought new challenges. Sofia and Daniel faced family losses, job changes, and even personal crises, but they always found in each other a safe haven. The forbidden romance that once began with furtive glances and secrets was now a solid and real love, capable of withstanding life's storms. It was no longer the initial intensity that united them, but the respect and understanding they had built over the years. They learned that true love is not only based on moments of passion, but also on the willingness to be by each other's side, to support in the most difficult times, and to rediscover beauty in each phase. When they looked at each other, they saw all the memories they had built together and everything they still wanted to share. Chapter 24, A Renewed Future. Now, with maturity and a strengthened love, Sofia and Daniel planned their future with a renewed sense. They decided it was time to do something they had always wished for: open a small inn in a nearby village. It would be a place where they could share stories, welcome people, and enjoy life at a pace they both appreciated. The inn, a shared project, became a symbol of everything they had overcome and how they had grown together. At the opening, when they looked at everything they had built, they realized that the love they felt for each other was now a serene and profound feeling. The danger of the forbidden romance was gone, but there was a rare complicity, the kind of love that survives time, hardships, and even the changes each had gone through. Sofia and Daniel showed that although the initial passion is exciting and transformative, true love is built day by day, with patience, dedication, and understanding. Life with another person is a journey full of ups and downs, but the commitment and willingness to evolve together make it all worth it. Chapter 25, A New Beginning. A few years after opening the inn, Sofia and Daniel had settled into their new life, and the tranquility of the village became the perfect refuge for them. Living in a house adjacent to the inn, Sofia and Daniel shared responsibilities and welcomed guests from all over, each with a story that enriched the environment. During one of these busy seasons, Sofia sensed a change within herself. Soon, they discovered they were expecting their first child, a moment that brought renewed joy and connected them even more deeply. Daniel was visibly moved, taking care of every detail for Sofia, preparing the baby's room, and planning each new step. The couple, who once lived an intense and adventurous life, was now preparing for a phase of stability and renewed love. A new purpose was being born that would transform both of their lives. Chapter 26, The Arrival of Gabriel. Gabriel's birth brought a new light into their lives. With his curious eyes and contagious smile, the baby seemed to carry the energy of both, blending Sofia's sweetness with Daniel's calm. However, the first months were challenging. Sofia adjusted to her role as a mother while Daniel split his time between the inn and the family. Exhaustion soon became a reality, and Sofia, once so independent, began to feel overwhelmed. Between sleepless nights and days spent caring for little Gabriel, Daniel and Sofia learned to support each other within their new dynamic. Conversations that once revolved around plans and trips now centered on bottles and diapers. Despite the fatigue, they found ways to reconnect, even in brief moments, and these pauses became precious for maintaining their love and partnership. Chapter 27: The Challenges of Living Together. As Gabriel grew, Sofia and Daniel faced a new phase. The boy was full of energy, and they dedicated themselves to providing a joyful and enriching childhood. However, differences in how each of them viewed raising children began to emerge. Sofia, always encouraging freedom and creativity, allowed Gabriel to explore and express his desires. Daniel, on the other hand, was more reserved, prioritizing rules and clear boundaries so that Gabriel could distinguish right from wrong. These disagreements led to arguments, and at times, Sofia and Daniel felt distant. They both wanted the best for their son, but the challenge of aligning their perspectives forced them to confront their own insecurities and fears. Still, they knew they needed to find a balance to raise Gabriel in harmony. Each conversation, even the difficult ones, became a lesson in partnership and patience. Chapter 28: The Birth of Alice. 5 years after Gabriel, Sofia and Daniel received another surprise. They were expecting their second child, a girl they named Alice. The news brought a new wave of joy and anticipation to the house. This time, they were more prepared, and their worries seemed smaller, but Alice's arrival brought unexpected challenges. Sofia now had to divide her attention between the energetic boy and the newborn, while Daniel worked tirelessly to support the family and take care of the inn. Sofia often felt guilty for not being able to give the same attention to both Gabriel and Alice at the same time. Daniel, seeing her overwhelmed, tried to take on even more responsibilities, but it physically drained him. Together, they realized that love, beyond being romantic, needed to be a real and daily support, something that went beyond words. They began to create small family routines to give stability to the children while also preserving their love and time together. Chapter 29: Rediscovering Love. As the years passed, Gabriel and Alice grew up, and time seemed to speed up. Daniel and Sofia, now so dedicated to their children, realized they were drifting apart as a couple. One night, after an argument about household responsibilities, Sofia sat next to Daniel and confessed she missed the time they used to spend just the two of them. He, surprised, admitted he felt the same. Life, with all its responsibilities, had made love a secondary task. They then decided to reconnect and carve out time for just the two of them. One night, Sofia and Daniel went out for dinner, just like in their college days. They reminisced about the beginning of their relationship, the adventures they had lived, and the journey that had brought them to this point. These moments together strengthened their bond, and the couple rediscovered the importance of nurturing love as if it were always something new. Chapter 30: Challenges in the Teen Years. When Gabriel reached adolescence, the challenges took on a new form. Questioning and full of curiosity, the teenager began testing the boundaries that had been set, and Daniel worried about the external influences the world might have on him. Sofia, trying to be understanding, sought to talk to their son, but soon realized he was distancing himself, sometimes spending long hours in his room. The disagreements between Sofia and Daniel about how to handle Gabriel resurfaced, and both felt emotionally drained. Daniel, more rigid, wanted clear limits, while Sofia tried to offer understanding and dialogue. In a decisive conversation, they understood that both had valid points and that it was essential to unite their efforts to help Gabriel navigate this phase. At this stage, trust and respect between them were crucial. Together, they adapted to the new phase, learning to be parents to a teenager, offering support while maintaining the structure and values they both cherished. Chapter 31: the unbreakable bond. As they neared their 20th wedding anniversary, Sofia and Daniel realized that, although time had changed many things, the love that had united them at the beginning was now deeper and more resilient. Gabriel had entered college, and Alice, now a teenager, began to explore her own passions and talents. The house, once filled with laughter and childish games, was now marked by more frequent silences, bringing a new phase for them. Sofia and Daniel, despite missing the times when their children were small, felt it was time to rediscover their own interests. Daniel returned to his passion for literature, while Sofia dedicated herself to art, something she had always loved but had put aside for the sake of the family. Now, they rediscovered themselves as individuals, but always with the love that had sustained them throughout the years. Chapter 32, The Celebration of Love. To celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary, Gabriel and Alice organized a surprise party for their parents at the inn. Family and longtime friends were present, and the celebration brought a mix of joy and emotion for Sofia and Daniel. Surrounded by everyone who had accompanied them, they realized how much they had achieved together. When they both took the stage for a brief speech, Daniel looked at Sofia, holding her hand, and said, "Living by your side has been the greatest adventure of my life." Sofia, moved, smiled and replied, "Our journey is proof that true love isn't perfect, but it is resilient and, above all, constant." The party continued with laughter, shared stories, and plenty of music, celebrating not just a marriage, but the building of a life full of meaning, overcoming challenges, and above all, love. Epilogue, The Legacy. With their children now adults and paving their own paths, Sofia and Daniel returned to focusing on the inn, turning it into a haven of stories and memories. The life they shared, with all its adversities and joys, had taught them the value of partnership, patience, and respect. Gabriel and Alice, now adults, recognized the example of love they had inherited. They knew that their parents' relationship had been built through sacrifices, joys, and moments of doubt, but above all, it had been nurtured by genuine and solid love. Both felt grateful for the legacy of love and perseverance that Daniel and Sofia had left, a story of true love, inspiring and unbreakable.